I made like kind of like a quick checklist of all of my experiences when it came to shot calling and a lot of like the mistakes and stuff that I learned from over time, as well as like having VODs for it, which is really nice. Luckily, I have a ton of videos from everything from like a little bit of Brawl, a little bit of Clap, Fame Farm, small scale, to like territory battles and that kind of stuff. So like shot calling in each one is just a little bit different. What a lot of shot callers should do is that they should always be like actively thinking about what they have and what they're doing, rather than just like turning off their brain and just assuming that everything's going to be the same for the most part. But also everyone shot calls kind of differently too. It just depends on how you shot call and how your guild reacts to your shot call. And some people like those types of shot calls, some people don't. Some people like really toxic type of shot calls, and some people like encouraging and funny and stuff like that kind of shot calls. But the number one problem to outline kind of like generically, you'll see this little handy dandy notepad that I have of like just some basics, such as knowing your comp, knowing the enemy's comp, knowing the terrain. You also need to trust your team. They also need to trust you. Things such as like being able to quickly look at an enemy and determine what type of composition that they have and how you want to play against them is also crucial to winning fights, because sometimes the best way to win a fight is actually to not fight. There's no point if you just like into your 10-man squad into like 30-man army. You know, people are going to be really upset about that. This is a video game, so people will choose to play because they have fun. If it's not fun, they're not going to come out to play the content. So like the big things for callers is be aware of your comp, enemy comp, be aware of the terrain and how you want to fight. Don't overextend and don't hesitate. I'll touch about this like a little bit more here because it's kind of a big topic. But the part about overextending is that like you're all the way up front, so you usually can see the enemy. So when you see a really juicy clump, you're gonna probably go in deep to engage on them because you see, oh, this is a big massive clump, and it's not like that at all, because your DPS is just not next to you to step up. They might be being stopped by D tanks, they might be stopped by like terrain or distance or anything in the number of the above. Whether that's like their fault or your fault, it's irrespective. It's important for the shot caller to be aware of positioning and to try to make sure the army is positioned in like where he wants them to be for the engage. I made this mistake quite a few times too, which is why sometimes you hear me screaming, where's my DPS, is because I sometimes go in too deep for the engage, or like you don't tell the DPS to step up kind of thing. And yeah, you can argue that like DPS should know what to do, but that's kind of like coming down to experience. And so we're gonna watch the first video here. This is all from my own YouTube channel, you guys. So if you go to my YouTube channel later on, I have like my social media everywhere, and go check out some of the videos. And I keep both the videos that we do well and do poorly on there, because I also intend to do like a VOD reviews of them later on. But also it's important to show like good and bad of your calls. Unfortunately, like there's just so many like people who just only publish the good videos, and you're like, that's a misrepresentation. They may not always be that good. They may just have had a good day or something like that, you know? So it's good to have both. Like a good caller knows how to deal with a bad day. So we're gonna go to this video right here, and this is when we were defending White Bank Wall in Fort Sterling. This is our territory that we had, and we were fighting against Arquidas, and it was, I think, pretty roughly similar IP and numbers. I can't quite remember at this point. Here, I'm just going to show one common mistake of like the enemy engage tank. And remember, we're focusing on shot calling, so we want to see exactly what we're doing here when it comes to engage tank, stuff like that. As you can see, and let me go back a little bit actually. So as you can see, we've already marked the enemy engage tank by the name of Danix from Arquidas. Yeah, so you see Danix right there. We've marked him with the red skull. Actually, probably we should have marked him with something like the sword or something else, because it's very hard to see a white skull on a white background. Territory wars are fundamentally different from other types of content because you have a lot of defensive, you have battle mounts and all that kind of stuff. So what you want to do first is you actually want to crack the front line of the enemy. So you were going to see right here Danix right there. As I moused over him, he is right about here, and as you can already see, like he's looking deep into this little pocket of us right here, right? But look at where his entire army is over here. For those of you that know Albion ranges, you're probably gonna hit maybe around here. right? By the time they're booting in, ideally his idea is that he wants his army to boot in with him and hit like probably on this wall right here into this clump right here. This would be a perfect situation if everything went according to plan, aka his army is already booting up to here. There are no D-tanks stopping them, and they already know where the clump is. But the problem that he doesn't see is that his army can't see where he's actually at. So when he says he's going in for a clump, they don't see any of that. They don't know where it's going. They don't know what's going to be happening. So they're just running up and they're just like hoping to hit something. You're going to see as well the issues that this is going to cause right here. Like, he gets a pull off. It's really good and all. You know, we should pop more defensives there and such like that. His army is like not even here. They're going to hit maybe on this wall right here if they wanted to hit their E's and then run back, but they don't actually hit anything. So he calls for the engage and his D-tanks are trying to like set up for him, but like no damage comes out because when you're talking about clap compositions, you only have maybe a 1 to 2 second window or even less when it comes to these bigger fights because people are popping the defensives, the D-tanks, the supports are popping their defenses for the group and stuff like that. So he goes in for the super deep dive and it amounts to nothing. So now we know that his stuff is down. So we're going to step up and we're going to take our time with it because we're on the defense and we can do whatever we want. So they're just throwing like down their defensives and all that kind of stuff. And I'm just like, hey, you know, this is pretty chill at the moment. I'm going to have my guy step up. You can already see that like in this here, we already have our DPS right here and we have some people here and we have some people here. So our angle, if I was to go for a clump, is maybe right about here if we push it. As you see later, a little bit later on, we're going to go a little bit. I'm going to call for the go in deep and I call in to hit on the floor right here. And as you can see, like, look at all that damage that comes through right there. And we don't kill them, of course, because, you know, that's just the general nature of early on when it comes to ZVZ, is that you're really destroying each other's defenses. You're trying to put pressure on each other's defenses first. Look at the difference between, like, the range that I send our army in at. We're only going to be hitting on the stairs here. Look how close we all are to it. The D-tanks and stuff like that are already here to be able to provide support for the counter attack when they counter hit us. If they do have fast engages to counter us. Even if they don't, it's always a good idea for your D-tanks to get in the habit of just simply being like, hey, our clap engage, we're going to now turn around and then stop the counter engage from the enemies on our guys, because that's what's going to happen every time. So we go in and I actually, now that I noticed this, kind of what fucked us up was there was a hollow fall E that knocked them up that stopped them from getting air compressed into my clump. But anyways, that's neither here nor there. We get a couple kills here and then we back up. The D-tanks are stepping up to provide stoppage that they need to, as well as like grabbing a couple of bags and stuff like that too. And then we just prepare for our next engage afterwards. We know their engage is coming up. So we see Danik stepping up again. And what is he hitting? He's just hitting like D-tanks and stuff like that. Like the tankiest people and that kind of stuff with the most defensives on. This then pulls his army out of position. As you can see, he rushed the engage there because he said, oh shoot, I have an opportunity to grab a couple people, right? Yeah, true. But like we already kind of stopped their engage a little bit right there. Hold on, let me just look at that again. So we see Danix right here. Let me just play this, see if I hear the callouts for it.
Side of us, Q's W's on the tanking fire. Yep.
But as you can see, like, look, he engages on us, and Magold's already stopping their DPS right here because he sees the engage go off. So this is a very good example of de-tanking right here. Yeah, but they can't hit all the way down to here where he's at. And even if they do hit, look at what we have here. It's legitimately all D-tanks. We're really, really tanky up here. Our healers are in the back playing like really well, and they're like keeping us safe. You know?
Look out! Look out! Look out!
And I call for like the lookout that they're coming in.
It's a fake.
But look at already by the fact that he pulled his army out of position and he does not have the D-tanks to stop us from engaging. Because he should have had D-tanks within us like here, maybe, all that kind of stuff. But we're now hitting him at an angle like right here, like that. You see what I mean? Like this is the cone effect right here. You'll get more DPS off hitting inwards. Meanwhile, they're trapped in this tiny little circle right here. I'll switch to another pen color. They're trapped in this little tiny circle right here. They get hit by GAs, they get hit. Everything that's hitting them hits them worse because they're all grouped up. So they're gonna get clumped up even worse. What they need to do is they need to recognize that that choke is a deadly choke, and they need to have their D-tanks pushing out into us in order to secure the space here to let the army flow through into a better positioning. If they could have their army on the south end facing us on the north end, we have south disadvantage. They have a wider space to engage on, and so it's a lot easier to beat a defending team that way. This is one of the hardest sections to bypass, but once you get into it and you stabilize yourself, you're fine. And then we just go for the counter engage right here.
5 seconds. Next engage is in 5 seconds. In 3, 2, 1. Hit this guy, hit this guy, hit this guy, hit this guy. Okay, nice.
I should have called for a better little thing. Yeah, but I mean, people hit none of their guys in the back anyways. I didn't want us to overreach that far anyways, because I saw that we were kind of out of position. I was playing a little bit more defensively there. But we managed to kill a bunch of them with the fact that we were strong, we were hitting like them without their defensives on. So,
oh my god, yeah, all right.
Yeah. It's still good to play a little bit defensively here, because the thing about clap composition is that it's still very, very strong, even if you lose a couple pieces of your clap composition. You know, we're defending, so we have the advantage because they had to come into us, is what I should say. We don't have to go out to them. I think that's what a lot of callers make the mistake of. They feel like, I have to rush to get out to the content. I have to go out to it. So a lot of callers make the mistake of not being, and I still make this mistake too from time to time, where like I rush us out because I want to get that content, like the large chest, the outpost, whatever it is, when it's much better to be like, hey, we're not going to get the outpost, but let's make sure our composition is correct, everyone is ready, and we go out there for a good fight. And then we just clap them again here because they didn't have enough of defenses of things like that. So as you can tell, their engage tank made several key mistakes. One was he did not prep his army correctly, and that they need a lot of D-tanks, a lot of supports, and a lot of healers. They had maybe 1 or 2 D-tanks, and they did not position themselves correctly. That's kind of on the D-tanks as well, but it's also kind of on the Shotcaller to make sure they're in the right spots. As you can see, like our D-tanks, we train them to be very aggressive. We train them to go into the enemy composition to stop them from like either retreating or from clapping us all over again, and to help secure our way backwards. You see like how right here we had all of our D-tanks being aggressive in the front line after we clapped, right? And they're building a wall right here so our DPS can walk backwards safely and feel confident about walking backwards. But when it came to Arquitas, what they did was they just sent in their whole army, and then they tended to just die because no one helped them get out again. Like, yeah, but you see, like, he kept rushing his engages right there, and his army was just never ready for his engages, you know? Like, he's not looking behind him. The D-tanks are looking for when the engage tank is going in. So if they see you just running in on boots, they're going to assume that you're engaging. They're going to CC the back line kind of deal. And then, like, look, they're all the DPS is still stepping up, and we're already gone, you know?
Yeah.
So, yeah, and now people are throwing their like stuff off timer on Arquita sides because they're panicking. You know, that's kind of just like in a case of just bad shot calling. In a way, the Arquita's shot caller did not understand the compositions he needed for fighting on territories, which goes back to my notepad right here. So you, as a shot caller, you need to really understand your composition and what it can and can't do. The problem is a lot of people in Albion don't like playing supports or D-tanks or healers, and there's just a lot of DPS, which is fine if you can kill them in one shot. But against very experienced Xur compositions or just experienced compositions, you're not going to be able to kill them because they have D-tanks out the ass to stop you constantly from engaging on them. So as a shot caller, it's your job to make sure that your composition is well balanced and it tends to do what you want it to do, whether it's brawl, clap, or train, which is clap into brawl, you need to understand that fully well. Then afterwards, you need to understand what your enemy is bringing to the table as well and how they're going to play it. And from there, experience will let you know how to work with the whole situation. I honestly do think though that like if I saw our composition and the amount of D-tanks we had versus the amount of D-tanks they brought, I probably would have called it off and not fought, because it's just so many D-tanks to stop. Unless like the enemy Zerg is making crucial mistakes or things like that. I guess you could also argue that like if you had a lot of tank killers, kill their front line first and then chew their way to the back line. When it comes to territory defenses, you know, people are like, we got to kill the DPS because they got all the juicy loot, they got all the stuff. We can ignore tanks and stuff like that because they're not worth anything. And if we kill all the tanks, then they're going to escape and we're going to lose all that money. That's kind of a bad thinking. That's what I think a lot of people think about. So when it comes to territory defenses, they're going to be there for the entire time defending the territory because the territories are so much more valuable that they're willing to like int sets. So people will just sit there inting sets to try to protect it. So what they should have done was they should have played a lot slower and they should have been killing like the front line a lot more slowly. Like, or focus on killing the front line instead of going for the deep engages and making sure the army is in position to be able to engage on that hit too. So that's kind of just like a generic overview look. I know I wrote down like positive performance, countdown methods, and pre-flight checklists, but we'll get to that as we go along through the other videos. Is there any questions?